There is a moment in a person's life when the mind doesn't simply bend, it breaks. Not loudly, not dramatically, but silently, like the final thread in a rope that has been pulled too tight for too many years. People don't lose themselves in an instant. They are unraveled slowly, piece by piece, by a past that never stopped clawing at them. And when someone finally reaches that point, when reality begins to warp and thoughts spiral out of control, most observers only see the outcome. They never see the brutality that came before it. You're here because you know something about struggle, or because someone in your life broke in ways you still don't understand, or because part of you fears what happens when a mind carries too much for too long. Let me say this clearly. No one goes crazy without a history, without a battlefield of wounds that were ignored, minimized, or misunderstood. Behind every fractured mind is a child who wasn't protected, a heart that wasn't heard, a soul that survived more than it should have. This video isn't about madness, it's about what pain does to a human being when it's left unchecked. It's about the night someone cried quietly because they couldn't afford to fall apart. It's about the weight of responsibilities no one else stepped in to share. It's about betrayal, abandonment, fear, shame, trauma layer after layer, pressed on the human psyche until something inside finally gives way. And here's the dangerous truth. Every mind has a limit. Every heart has a breaking point. What you're about to hear is not a story of weakness, but of a person who was strong for far too long. The world often blames the collapse, but never asks what caused the fall. Tonight, we're going to pull back the curtain. We're going to look at the brutal past that shapes a mind on the verge of breaking and what that says about all of us. Number 1, the childhood that never healed. A mind does not shatter in adulthood without first being cracked in childhood. The breaking begins early, long before anyone notices, long before the world understands. Childhood is supposed to be a place of softness, protection, and guidance, but for the person whose future unravels, it is often the sharpest chapter, the kind no one talks about, the kind they were taught to forget, even though it never stopped shaping them. The brutal truth is this: a child absorbs pain with no filter, no shield, no logic to protect them from what they cannot understand. When they grow up in a home filled with silence instead of comfort, chaos instead of safety, criticism instead of warmth, they learn early that the world is not a place to trust. They learn to read danger in every tone of voice. They learn to disappear inside their own mind because it's the only place no one can reach them. Neglect becomes the first teacher. Loneliness becomes the first friend. Fear becomes the first language they learn to speak fluently. And the saddest part, no one around them sees the wounds forming. No one recognizes that the quiet child is not calm, they're surviving. The independent child is not strong, they're abandoned. The well-behaved child is not mature, they're terrified of making things worse. As they grow, the cracks deepen. Emotional needs go unmet. Questions go unanswered. Their spirit bends under the weight of expectations no child should ever carry. They don't learn how to cope. They learn how to suppress. They don't learn how to ask for help. They learn how to pretend they're fine. They become experts at hiding pain because revealing it only made things harder. This is where the breaking begins, slowly, quietly, invisibly. Childhood trauma doesn't leave bruises on the skin. It leaves fractures in identity. It rewires the brain, reshapes the heart, and creates a lifelong fear of losing control. And years later, when the adult finally collapses under the weight of everything they endured, the world calls it sudden. But nothing about it is sudden. The mind remembers everything the child was forced to forget. The past never disappears. It waits patiently until the day those abandoned wounds finally demand to be felt. Number 2. The loneliness that changes a person. There is a kind of loneliness so deep it doesn't feel like being alone. It feels like being invisible. It's the kind of loneliness that follows a person everywhere, even into crowded rooms, even into relationships, even into moments where they are surrounded by laughter and warmth. It is not the absence of people. It is the absence of connection. And for someone whose mind eventually breaks, this loneliness becomes a quiet poison slowly spreading through their life. Loneliness reshapes a human being in ways that are subtle at first. It starts with silence, a silence that feels safer than speaking. Then it becomes isolation, not because they don't want to be understood, but because no one ever understood them when it mattered most. They begin to shrink emotionally, withdrawing into themselves, building a world inside where they can finally feel some form of control. This internal world becomes their refuge, but it is also their trap. When someone carries loneliness for years, they learn to wear masks, smiling when they're breaking, laughing when they feel hollow, acting strong when they're exhausted. They stop saying, "I'm fine," because it's true they were never fine to begin with. They learned early that their pain made others uncomfortable, so they buried it. And the longer they bury it, the heavier it becomes. There comes a point where loneliness stops being a feeling and becomes a filter. They start interpreting every interaction through the lens of abandonment and rejection. A late reply feels like a dismissal. A short conversation feels like disinterest. A broken promise feels like confirmation of what they've believed all along, that they don't truly matter to anyone. And here lies the brutality. Humans are not built to survive without connection. The brain begins to deteriorate in prolonged emotional isolation. The nervous system becomes hypersensitive. Paranoia grows. Self-worth collapses. The person begins to drift mentally, creating stories to fill the empty spaces left by others. Their thoughts darken. Their reality warps. Their mind becomes both their shelter and their prison. Loneliness doesn't break a person overnight. It breaks them slowly by convincing them that reaching out is pointless. Trusting others is dangerous. And opening up is a mistake they can't afford to make. By the time the world realizes something is wrong, the person has already spent years drowning silently in an ocean no one else bothered to notice. Number 3. The weight of expectations and pressure. There is a specific kind of pressure that doesn't crush you all at once. It crushes you slowly, quietly, while everyone around you praises you for how strong you are. This is the pressure that destroys people from the inside out. The expectation to stay calm, stay composed, stay productive, stay responsible, stay okay, no matter what storms are tearing through your mind. For the person whose mind eventually breaks, life becomes a performance long before the collapse. They learn to function while falling apart. They learn to smile with shaking hands. They learn to hold themselves together even when every part of their body is begging to let go. People call them resilient, dependable, admirable, never realizing that the praise becomes another weight pressed on top of the pain they're already carrying. Expectations are heavy, especially the unspoken ones. Be strong. Don't cry. Don't complain. Don't burden anyone. Don't show weakness. Carry everything. Carry everyone. And so they do. They carry their trauma. They carry their loneliness. They carry their fear. They carry the past no one helped them escape. They carry responsibilities no one else would touch. They carry everything except themselves. Over time, the pressure builds into something unbearable. They wake up every day, already exhausted. Their mind starts racing before they even open their eyes. Every task feels heavier. Every choice feels sharper. Every failure feels fatal. They try harder and harder while feeling less and less alive. The worst part is that the world cannot see the battle. People only see the results, the achievements, the stability, the effort. They don't see the sleepless nights. They don't see the breakdowns behind closed doors. They don't see the emotional numbness that creeps in after years of pretending to be strong. And then comes the shift, the moment when the pressure begins to distort their thoughts. They can no longer tell the difference between reality and fear. They feel watched, judged, criticized by shadows in their own mind. They begin to believe they're failing even when they're holding everything together. Their internal monologue becomes cruel, relentless, unforgiving. You see, pressure doesn't just weigh on the shoulders, it warps identity. It convinces a person that they are never enough, no matter what they do. It makes them believe they are constantly one mistake away from losing everything. It pushes their mental limits inch by inch, until the point where even the smallest task feels like a threat. No one breaks because they are weak. They break because they were strong for too long, carrying expectations that would destroy anyone who had to carry them alone. Number 4. The betrayals, losses, and traumas that push a person over the edge. There comes a moment in a person's life when pain stops being something they carry and becomes something that consumes them. Not the pain of daily stress, not the pain of small disappointments, but the kind of pain that rewrites a person from the inside out. Betrayal, loss, trauma. These are the earthquakes of the human psyche, the events that crack the ground beneath someone's identity until they no longer recognize the person staring back at them in the mirror. Betrayal hits first like a shockwave, when someone they trusted, a partner, a friend, a family member, turns out to be the source of their deepest wound. Their entire understanding of safety collapses. It's not just the relationship that breaks. It's their ability to trust, to open up, to believe in good intentions. Betrayal teaches them a cruel lesson. Love is dangerous. Vulnerability is a risk. And closeness is a battlefield. One betrayal can take years of stability away in a single moment. Then comes loss, the kind that leaves an empty space inside them nothing can fill. Losing someone they depended on, someone they loved, someone they built their world around. Grief is not just sadness, it's disorientation. It distorts time, warps emotion, and isolates the heart even further. They begin to see the world as a place where everything important can be ripped away without warning. And that belief roots itself deeply inside their mind, shaping every thought that follows. Trauma is the final blow, the kind of experience that doesn't end even when it's over. It lingers. It echoes. It imprints itself into the nervous system. Their brain learns fear, even in safety. Their body learns tension, even in rest. Their mind learns to anticipate danger, even in silence. Trauma reshapes the brain's pathways, making threats appear everywhere and comfort feel temporary. This is where the unraveling begins. They start dissociating, drifting out of their own thoughts because reality feels unbearable. They begin losing track of time. They feel disconnected from their own emotions, or too deeply connected to them. Their sense of self becomes fragile, blurry, unstable. And the world around them continues as if nothing happened. People say, "Move on. You'll be fine." Others have it worse, not realizing that trauma is not something a person steps out of now. It is something they carry in their body, in their reactions, in their memories, in the way their mind tries desperately to survive. When betrayal, loss, and trauma combine, they create a psychological storm almost impossible to withstand. The person doesn't just lose their sense of safety, they lose their ability to trust their own mind. They question their memories, their instincts, their worth, their reality. This is not sudden madness. This is the final stage of a heart that has been wounded too deeply, too often. A mind pushed beyond its natural limits. A soul exhausted from holding pain it was never meant to hold alone. And by the time the world notices that something is wrong, the fracture has already become a fault line. The breaking has already begun. Number 5. The final snap, when the mind can't hold on anymore. There is a point, a terrifying, a silent point, where the human mind decides it cannot carry any more pain, pressure, or memory. And this moment does not look like the movies. It isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. Instead, it arrives quietly, like a final exhale after years of holding one's breath. This is the moment when the internal weight becomes heavier than the person carrying it. This is where the mind stops trying to cope and begins to protect itself in the only way it knows how, by breaking. Long before the collapse, there are warnings that no one sees. Sleep becomes fragmented. Thoughts become tangled. Emotion becomes unpredictable. The person swings between numbness and overwhelming intensity. Their inner world becomes a storm of fear, exhaustion, and confusion. They know something is wrong, deeply wrong, but they cannot name it. The mind becomes like a room filled with smoke. Everything is blurry, disorienting, impossible to grasp. Their thoughts start turning against them. Small problems feel catastrophic. Innocent comments feel threatening. Familiar places feel unsafe. Their own memories feel twisted. They begin questioning their perceptions. They begin doubting their own sanity. And here is the cruelest truth. When a mind reaches its breaking point, it is not because the person is fragile. It is because they've been too strong for too long. They held their trauma. They held their loneliness. They held the expectations. They held the betrayals. They held the pain. They held everything that should have broken them years earlier. And the mind, overwhelmed by years of silent suffering, finally says, "No more." Quote, "The final snap is not a moment of weakness. It is the body's last attempt to survive. The mind shuts down parts of itself to stop the emotional bleeding. It may detach from reality. It may numb emotions entirely. It may create illusions of danger where there is none. It may push the person into panic, or into silence, or into complete emotional collapse. To outsiders, it looks sudden. To the person living it, it is the result of a lifetime of battles no one else witnessed. This is why saying someone just lost it is cruelly simplistic. A mind does not break without 1,000 unseen reasons. A person does not fall apart without years of holding themselves together in the dark. Their collapse is not a moment, it is the final chapter of a story no one bothered to read. And behind every final snap is a warning. Pain that goes unspoken becomes unbearable. Pressure that goes unnoticed becomes lethal. Trauma that goes untreated becomes a ticking fuse. When the mind finally breaks, it is not the end, it is the consequence. The result of a past that was never healed, a burden never shared, a cry never heard. The breaking point is not the moment they stop fighting. It's the moment they finally run out of strength to keep pretending they're okay. Conclusion. In the end, a broken mind is not a mystery, it is a message written in years of silence, years of endurance, years of wounds no one cared to look at. When someone finally collapses, the world gasps in shock. But the truth is that the real tragedy happened long before that moment. It happened in the childhood where comfort was missing. It happened in the loneliness that hollowed them out from the inside. It happened in the pressure that told them to be strong, even when they were dying emotionally. It happened in the betrayals and losses that shattered their sense of safety. The final break is only the echo of everything they survived alone. No one loses their mind suddenly. No one becomes unstable out of nowhere. The human psyche does not crumble without reason. It erodes slowly, painfully, quietly. And the most heartbreaking part is this: the world rarely pays attention until the damage is irreversible. People admire your strength until the day it destroys you. They praise your resilience until it becomes clear how much it cost you. They call you dramatic when you express pain, and then they call you broken when you can no longer hide it. But collapsing is not shameful. It is human. It is the natural consequence of carrying more than a single soul was ever meant to bear. Those who fall apart are not weak, they're warriors whose armor finally cracked under the weight of a lifetime. And if the world truly understood what they endured, it wouldn't judge them. It would mourn for them. It would apologize to them. It would finally see them. Let this story be more than just a story. Let it be a warning. A reminder that people don't need lectures. They need understanding. They don't need judgment. They need compassion. They don't need to toughen up. They need someone to notice when they are drowning. Because every shattered mind began with someone who was once soft, once hopeful, once full of life, until the world took more from them than they had to give. And maybe the most important truth is this: anyone, no matter how strong, can break if left alone with enough pain. And anyone, no matter how broken, can begin to heal the moment someone finally says, "I see you. You're not alone anymore." Well,